So I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
Wouldn't your brother say to you, Harry, how could you do this to me? After everything we went through, wouldn't that be what he would say?
He'd probably say all sorts of different things.
The latest snapshot in this When Harry Went Rogue saga, an ITV News interview to be aired this weekend. And the Prince's latest allegations are simple yet incendiary. Ignore the public display of unity following the Queen's death. My brother is, in Harry's words, my arch nemesis. In the Prince's new autobiography, Spare, he alleges that his brother physically attacked him back in 2019, here in the kitchen of Nottingham Cottage on the Kensington Palace estate. In a copy obtained by The Guardian, Prince Harry alleges that his brother wanted to discuss the whole rolling catastrophe of their relationship, but he was piping hot and called Meghan difficult and abrasive. According to Harry, the argument moved to the kitchen, where he gave his brother some water and said, "Willie, I can't speak to you when you're like this." He then writes, "He set down the water, called me another name, then came at me. It all happened so fast, so very fast. He grabbed me by the collar, ripping my necklace, and he knocked me to the floor. I landed on the dog's bowl, which cracked under my back, the pieces cutting into me. I lay there for a moment, dazed, then got to my feet and told him to get out."
Why be so public? You say you tried to do this privately.
And every single time I've tried to do it privately, there have been briefings and leakings and planting of stories against me and my wife. You know, the family motto is never complain, never explain, but it's just a motto.
No complaining or explaining today from his family. Buckingham and Kensington Palace both said they would not be issuing a comment. Not all of the book focuses on the monarchy. Reports suggest Harry also writes about killing 25 Taliban fighters during his tour of Afghanistan. But there are countless accusations at the family firm. Harry reportedly accuses the Queen Consort of leaking stories to the press and says he and William begged King Charles to not marry Camilla. Harry also says that William and Kate approved of him wearing a Nazi uniform to a 2005 party. Of course, family disputes are nothing new to ancient royalty. King John plotted with the French against his brother Richard the Lionheart. Richard III took the throne off his sibling's son and is even alleged to have had his 2 nephews killed. But that was all about fighting over the throne. Prince Harry, like his great-great-uncle Edward VIII, is shunning royalty because of its inability to modernise. On abdication, Edward said that he could never tolerate the restrictions, the etiquette and the loneliness. Prince Harry's latest accusations are about what he sees as an institution stuck in its ways, unable to help or reform. In the book, Harry claims that his father said to his sons at the funeral of Prince Philip, "Please boys, don't make my final years a misery." With more of the book's details now emerging, including sordid tales about Harry's own personal life, it's whether they cause more misery for the monarchy or for the Duke himself.
Well, joining me now is the royal and constitutional commentator, Peter Hunt. Peter, thanks very much for joining us this evening. There has been so much written and said over the last couple of years about this fractious relationship between these two royal brothers. Where does this particular revelation today, this allegation that Prince William physically knocked Harry over during an argument, where does that sit in all of this?
Well, it's very damaging, and we have to step back and view the institution of the monarchy, and it needs and thrives on mystique. It thrives on magic, and that magic was dented a few decades back when we learnt through a private conversation that became public that the then Prince Charles wanted to be a tampon so he could be closer to his then lover, Camilla Parker Bowles. Now today we've learnt that the son of the king lost his virginity to an older woman who treated him like a young stallion in a field behind a busy pub. So what Harry has done with this autobiography is sort of not only rip apart that curtain of mystery and magic and mystique, he set it on fire. And as we're hearing in that report, one of the more poignant elements is this conversation between Charles, Harry and William, where he pleaded with them not to make his final years a misery. This turmoil was once private, now it's very public, and we, the public, are feasting on these carcasses of deteriorating relationships between two brothers and between a son and a king, his father.
You know, and in a way, fighting brothers is no surprise, but these are very particular people. Is it a dignified silence from the palace, would you say, or a nervy, guilty silence? There's been no denial of this specific allegation.
Well, I think a key test will be whether the silence is real silence, because what Harry always alleges, and what we will be able to observe when we read our papers in the coming days, what he alleges is that they put out sources who brief, and so will they brief, about what William thinks, what the King thinks, and then the article quotes all these sources, and then at the bottom of the article it states Buckingham Palace didn't make any comments. So that has been Harry's allegation in the past, and we'll see if that bears fruit in the coming days.
I mean, we know since the Netflix documentary that it would seem the public stand firmly behind Prince William and his wife, with support for Harry and Meghan plummeting. Does this change things at all, do you think?
Well, I think Harry and Meghan would obviously argue that in part the reason why support in the UK is plummeting is because of the way they are portrayed in the media, and some of that portrayal sometimes leaks into some of the broadcasters, including the BBC, in their coverage. I think what they would argue is this is their opportunity for Harry to present his point of view. Supporters and defenders of the institution of the monarchy will say it will survive. This will be next week's chip paper. They will argue that it survived the abdication, the War of the Waleses, the death of Diana, Princess of Wales. But of course, with each passing year, we are a less deferential nation. Younger people are not as enthused about the monarchy, according to polls, as older people are. And one of the risks for the institution of the monarchy is that the more we see them as normal, the more we hear about how they fight, how they call each other's names, how they argue, the more we see them as Fred and Frida, the more people may question, why do we treat them differently? Why do we give them privileges? Why do we place them on a pedestal?
And on exactly that point, does this at all raise any questions in anyone's mind about whether William is fit to be king?
Well, I imagine that critics of the institution, those who seek an elected head of state rather than one that is through an accident birth, that is very much what they will argue, that this is part of their sustained campaign. They would say that would argue that he is not fit to be king. Obviously, his supporters will say, as you will have read and seen already today, that sometimes brothers do fight, sometimes brothers do fall out.
Prince Harry says today in his interview with Tom Bradby that my door is always open, that the ball is firmly in my family's court. Do you think the family will play that ball or ignore it altogether?
Well, at the moment, the gulf is vast and it seems unbridgeable. You mentioned the Tom Bradby interview. I think that will be a fascinating broadcast on Sunday. Tom Bradby knows where the bodies are. It will be fascinating to see how much he and Harry choose to excavate them. And of course, from our perspective as viewers, what will be useful is to be able to see him, Harry, being questioned. Thus far, we have his autobiography, which by definition is his side of the story. Netflix was his side of the story. So in the interview, it'll be interesting to see how far he is challenged. He's challenged a bit already in the clips that have been released. It will be interesting to see how much evidence he provides about this constant refrain that Harry has about a compact between the press and the palace, and also whether he offers any reflection about how he, Harry, and his wife Meghan could have done things differently.